Mick Gray chats with Deke Dickerson, May 5th, 2023.
KMiC Radio wants to welcome this gentleman, Deke Dickerson. How are you tonight, my friend?
I'm doing well. Can you hear me? Can you see me?
I hear you. I see you. You look fantastic, man. What an honor it is to have you here tonight, man. Singer, songwriter, author, music historian, collector of stuff, guitar virtuoso. You are really a pretty amazing personality. I've wanted to talk to you for a long time.
Well, thanks for having me on the show, man. I appreciate it.
Where do we start? I always love to go back and ask you about when you were a kid, because I know when you were like 17, you started. What did you start Untamed Youth around 17 years old?
Yeah, that was my first touring band, the first band I ever made records with. But you know, I had my first band when I was 13. I was going around playing in the local bars because I was 6 feet tall, and everybody kind of thought I was sort of old enough. They all knew I was young, but I was tall enough to get away with it.
Too cool, man. So, I mean, what can you remember? What was that first spark? You were let's say you were driving with your mom and dad and heard something on the radio or something like that. Do you remember a spark that just went, "Oh my God, music"?
Yeah, absolutely. I completely born at the wrong time, I guess, because, when I was a little kid, all this stuff like, the Osmonds and Led Zeppelin and, just all that sort of 70s soft rock stuff like Bread was really, really popular. And I just, I was 5 or 6 years old and I hated it. I was like, what is this? I hate this music. And I remember the very first season of Happy Days.
Oh my God.
Had Bill Haley's Rock Around the Clock as a theme song before they came up with their own theme song in the second season.
Yeah.
And I just remember as soon as I heard Bill Haley and the Comets playing, I was like, yes, that's the music I like. And then, there was that kind of weird 50s revival thing going on in the 70s.
Yeah.
So I would see people like Chuck Berry or Jerry Lee Lewis or Fats Domino on TV. And as soon as I saw Chuck Berry, that was it. It was like, I have to get a guitar. How soon until I can get a guitar and start playing guitar? Because that is what I want to do.
Yeah. You have to be an old soul. You have to be a soul that was reincarnated, because when you heard that Bill Haley song, it's just like, that's it,
Yeah, I always joke that I didn't pick this kind of music, that it seemed to have picked me.
It's great. It's fantastic, man. My friend Dave just brought up your just infamous now over the last 3 years, these videos that you've made where and everybody has to go watch these if you get a chance. He'll take a song that he really loves and he'll play everything in the song, all the parts, himself, dressed in different attire. Each one's a different personality now. And he does these songs. And that song we just heard, The Year That Got Away, he did one for that too. Me being a comic book artist, the first thing everybody always asks me is, how long does it take you to do a page? Well, I'm going to ask you, how the hell long does it take to make those videos?
Well, first of all, I will say that although it may seem like I was trying to create art or, do something creative, I was actually just really hustling for tips, because
you had to.
Everybody was doing something online. Everybody was doing some kind of live stream concert. And I just kind of thought, man, I got to do something different because everybody I know is kind of doing the same thing. I don't want to do the same as them.
Yeah.
And so a friend of mine, well, actually, this guy Bert in the Whippersnappers that I play with, he was doing some of these videos using this really crummy little app called Acapella, and it was a really janky kind of app that just barely worked. But you could have these different windows, and you could record each window of you playing or singing a different part. And a lot of people just used like their earphone microphones and got like pretty decent results. And so at first it was extremely time consuming because, I was having to play every single part along with the other parts and, through these crummy headphones and it took forever. And then eventually, I did enough of the videos to where I could sort of streamline the process.
Yeah.
really improved the sound. And by the time I got around to doing some of these original things, like The Year That Got Away, I had the process down pretty well.
Yeah.
So it was a fun learning experience, and I got to do a bunch of genres of music that I never would have done before. I mean, that one is almost like a classic rock. It's almost like a like a John Cougar Mellencamp song or something.
Yeah.
Which is something I never ever did in my life, but it turned out well. That they played the crap out of that song on Sirius XM. And,
I was just gonna say, I first heard it on Sirius.
Yeah, they played it almost every day, and I got a really nice royalty check because of that. Because Sirius actually pays decent royalties.
Nice.
So yeah, it's like I said in the song. Some things were bad and some things were good about the pandemic. Like that period of time where all my gigs were canceled. That's probably the only time in my life where I'll ever have that much time to just sit around in the studio and just experiment and mess around on stuff that I never would have done before.
Yeah, and the creativity that you got to do there, it is brilliant. It just turned. I just loved watching every one of them. I think the last one you made, the Who song with your puppy, that one was just so great because I've told you before, my dog looks exactly like your dog.
Yeah.
I should bring her in later and show her to you.
He was the star of that video. That's for sure.
It was fantastic, man. Fantastic. Let's bring up right now, and I want to just talk about it just a little bit, but then I want to play it because it's just brand new. She just posted it today. Forgive me if I pronounce her name wrong. Gray Delisle, is that how she pronounces it?
Gray Delisle.
Gray Delisle.
Okay.
If you don't know who she is, she's a brilliant musician. I found out about her years ago, but she's like known as one of the great voice actors in cartoons. She's been Daphne and Scooby-Doo for years. She's done all sorts of stuff, but she has a great...
she's done something like 1,200 of the most famous cartoon voices, female and male. Like she's Martin on The Simpsons right now.
Yeah, she's all over the place. She's one of the most in-demand cartoon voices in the industry. But like I say, really great personality and a great musician and songwriter too. How'd you get connected with her?
I've known Gray for a really long time. This is going back, to the old days, pre-internet. She was in a band. I want to say their name was Saddle Sore. And then she had a record deal with Sugar Hill Records, and she was married to Murray, the bass player of the old 97s.
Yeah.
And, so she was around. Like I knew her as a singer. And then this whole other thing happened for her with the voice actress thing. But she really loves writing songs and singing. And so she's done a ton of stuff in my studio the last couple of years, and she's great.
She was out at the Hillbilly Fest too with you, right?
That's right. She was playing Granny from the musical duo The Jugs.
Oh my God, that sounds fantastic, man. Now, again, help me with the way she pronounces it. Delisle?
No, Delisle.
Delisle. Okay, I'm gonna write it down so I'll know it. Delisle, there we go. Gray Delisle. Here is her latest song, produced by our guest tonight.
And I'm playing guitar and bass and
really
doing all kinds of other stuff on this. Yeah.
So you're not just producing; you're actually playing on this sucker.
Yep.
Great song.
If I recall correctly, we recorded this live in the studio with myself on bass and a drummer. And I'm trying to remember, there may have been Eddie Clendenning on rhythm guitar as well. And then I took it in the studio and overdubbed this nylon string guitar and some other stuff.
Wow.
And it turned out really nice.
Really nice. And this is the latest thing you've done? Recorded?
Well, yeah, we'll get around to the Whippersnappers album in just a second.
We'll be talking about that.
She did just release this today.
Cool. Here you go, everybody. KMiC Radio. We're here with Deke Dickerson. How many guitars do you have? I don't know. I shouldn't even ask, but how many guitars do you think you have?
Well, people are always obsessed with how many guitars do I own? I don't really know. It's somewhere around 100. It fluctuates around 100, which sounds like a lot, but I will say, okay, I may have around 100 guitars, but I'm a guitar player. Like, these are my freaking tools. Like, do you go to the mechanic? Do you go to a mechanic and say, "Hey, man, how many screwdrivers do you have?" Like, really, just leave me alone about it. I have a friend in Springfield, Missouri, a guy named Rob Lurvy, who has 3,000 guitars.
Oh my God!
I always use him as my benchmark. Like,
does he have does he have a warehouse? How does he keep them?
He does.
Yeah.
It's a long story, but he has a big building with all these rooms that are tricked out. And literally, there's like instruments on every wall of every room going up all the way up to the ceiling. Oh my
God! And you don't only have guitars, but you have some historic equipment and guitars.
I like that sort of thing. Sure, and I guess I was in the right place at the right time, moving out to California in the early 1990s, because so much of this stuff was either despised or really undervalued. And so as I kind of went along, I was like, I think that's cool for $200. Sure, I'll buy that.
Wow.
And then, of course, now with eBay and all the other kind of things that have driven Antiques Roadshow or whatever, that have driven prices into the stratosphere, I'm glad that I picked things up when I did.
Do you own... am I correct by saying you own one of Link Wray's guitars?
I do, yeah. And it's the Dan Electro Longhorn guitar that he's pictured with in that iconic photo. Yeah.
The one.
And boy, it's a super long story. I wrote a whole chapter about it in this book I wrote called The Strat in the Attic.
I got to read that book.
Curious about
yep.
Because it's a real, it's just a long story. I'll just put it that way. But the guitar, you may have heard that Link Wray just got inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which I'm really happy about. They finally rectified that injustice.
Yeah.
And literally the day after that, I got an email from a guy at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame saying, "Hey, I know you have Link's guitar. Would you consider loaning us a guitar for a display, honoring him?" I'm like, yeah, heck yeah. So we're working out those details, and that guitar is going to go out there.
So cool, man. We're gonna do a little Link set later, I think, just in honor of his what would have been his something like 90th, or not 90th. How old would he have been? 96, I think, something like that.
I don't think quite that old, but he was definitely older. He was a little bit older than the rest of the rockabilly generation.
Right.
I'm gonna look that up right now.
And being inducted, pretty much the day after what would have been his birthday, he was inducted into Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The guy, that we could go into a long dissertation on what's fucked up about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but I mean, first number one rule in my book, if I was putting the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame together, would be everybody that is a major influence on the original rock and roll should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Why did it take this long to get Link Wray in? I don't know, but oh well.
Well,
he's in now.
I actually wrote an article about this a few years ago for an online blog that I don't think exists anymore called pleasekillme.com. But the thing about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is that it's always kind of been a corporate sponsored thing. Like they have the Ahmet Ertgun wing, the guy from Atlantic Records gave him a bunch of money. So of course there's a whole bunch of Atlantic Records artists in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Right.
It's one of those kind of corporate things, and I understand that's the way the world works. But the thing with Link is that Link was on a bunch of kind of smaller labels. He did have a couple of big hits, but he was never in the public consciousness the way that Elvis was or something like that. And so he didn't really have any sort of corporate representative to sort of grease him in the way that so many of the other guys did. And then what happened is that they switched to this thing where they have to vote the inductees in, and everybody was too young. It was all these millennials and stuff like that had never even heard of Link Wray, and they're inducting people like the Red Hot Chili Peppers in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So they end up just pleasing the people that are voting, and they're young people. Yeah. again, like I know how these things work. I sort of get it. But in the back of my mind, I was saying they really need to do something with people like Mick Gray, who were missed in the early stages of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, to just get them in because they need to be in.
Yeah.
And that's eventually what they wound up doing, is they inducted him as a musical influence or something like that. I can't remember what the category is.
Yeah, it should be separate. It should be. That should be all the influences, and especially, these guys we're losing them right and left, Get them.
Yeah,
if there's one or two of them around left, there aren't that many. I did a whole show the other maybe 8 months ago of original guys from the late 50s, early 60s that are still around, and there aren't that many.
Yeah.
No. So I mean, it's we could go on about that, but we have so much to talk about. You have a brand new record, Honky Tonkin' Rhythm. Right. Honky Tonkin' Rhythm, right, with the Whippersnappers. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, I formed the Whippersnappers basically right before the pandemic. I had this idea basically because, so many of the guys that I played with moved away or started playing with famous bands, like Chris Bragg, who played drums with me for a long time. He joined Low Straitjackets. Brent Harding, who played bass for me for a long time, he joined the Social Distortion. George A. Stiepovich, who played bass for me, also he joined Tiger Army.
Jeez.
So I couldn't get any of my regular guys to play, and it became very difficult to do gigs, and I said, man, I really want to form a band with some energetic young guys, and that's exactly what I did. The Whippersnappers are all really, really great musicians, and they're pretty young, so they have lots of energy. They love doing everything, rehearsing, playing shows, all the stuff that it's hard to get all the older guys to do anymore.
Yeah, bass, drums, and second guitar?
Yeah, we started out as a three-piece, like Elvis, Scotty, and Bill, with no drums.
Yeah.
And we did that kind of all through the pandemic. And then last year, we added a drummer, Dylan Patterson, and it's been great. He really filled out the sound. So
fantastic.
We started recording this CD, and there's a couple of songs on the CD that are of the three-piece lineup. But most of the CD is with the drums, and I think it turned out really well. I'm really happy with the results.
Let's listen to a couple songs off the latest record from Deke Dickerson and the Whippersnappers. This record's called Honky Tonk Rhythm. Is it available right now? I mean, it's out.
You can order this. You can order the CD. The vinyl is still in production. It's going to be several months because you know how vinyl is these days. Yeah, and then it's on. You can buy downloads and you can listen to it on all the streaming platforms. So yes, it is out.
Yeah, it's hard with the vinyl because they take those old Bakelite radios from the 50s and they have to melt them all down to make vinyl these days. There's just not enough plastic left. It's really hard.
Well, the biggest problem is that everybody's trying to get vinyl done right now, and so it's just like this big queue of everybody waiting.
Isn't it crazy that, it was like CDs, the wave of the future. And then all of a sudden it was like, wait a minute, that vinyl stuff had a really good sound to it. And then it became really retro. And now, what do you think's going to happen to CDs now? Are they gone?
Well, the funny thing is I was debating whether or not to even press a CD of this new album. And then I thought, you know what? I think that there's enough people that still like CDs that I should go ahead and do it. Yeah. And I've been selling a ton this last week. I'm actually shocked at how many CDs that I've sold. Well, so there is still an audience for that.
Still people buying them. I'm glad to hear. I got the Advance 45, which is
we put that out right as the pandemic happened in 2020. And it's now out of print. So, man, you got a collectible in your hand.
Oh, I love it.
Save it for like 10 years. It could be worth up to $11 or $12.
No, it's worth $1 million in my book, baby. The production is fantastic on this record. It really sounds good.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Holy crap. Like I was talking a little earlier, you just got back from Hillbilly Fest, Viva Las Vegas. That must have been a crazy... You do that every year, right? Are you involved with the actual organization of that?
Well, so at Viva Las Vegas this year, I actually did 5 different shows. I played a set with the Whippersnappers. The Dave and Deke combo played outside at the car show on Saturday afternoon.
Wow.
I played with a guy named Mark Valentine on Thursday night. I played guitar for him. I put on my guitar festival Saturday night in the downstairs showroom, and then Sunday in the showroom, we put on the Dave and Deke Hillbilly Fest that you were mentioning. So that was a busy weekend.
Wow,
I was
really
pretty tired by the time I got back.
And there was at least one legendary legend there, Mr. Doug Kershaw, right?
That's right. We were happy to have the Raging Cajun out for another show.
My God, how old's he?
He is 87 years old.
Wow. And going strong. Going strong,
man. It was just always a thrill to play with him.
Jeez, man. You've played through the years. It seems like a part of your, I don't know, something you really strive for, to find the guys that are still around and get a chance to at least hang out with them, maybe talk to them, and maybe even play with them.
I've been very lucky to play with most of my heroes. And yeah, that was a big deal for me when I first started playing this music. I was like, man, I want to play with my heroes. And other than a couple, I never got to play with Jerry Lee or Little Richard, but man, I got to play with so many of the other ones. The list is insanely long.
What would be a highlight that you'll just cherish forever?
Well, definitely a highlight I will cherish forever is when the Collins kids came back from retirement and played their first reunion show. And this would have been in England in 1993 or something like that.
Yeah.
And, it was at this festival and the anticipation was really high. Like, oh my God, the Collins kids are coming back to play a show. And nobody really knew what to expect, because they hadn't performed, I don't think, since maybe the early 70s.
Wow.
So when they started playing and it sounded like those old records and they had all the energy and they were giving the audience what they wanted, it was the closest thing to Beatlemania that I've ever experienced. I mean,
wow.
When they finished that first song, it was just like the cheering and the screaming and the yelling. It was just like these waves of heat and energy coming off the audience. And it was like that, we must have done 5 or 6 encores. It was that like I said, the closest I've ever come to anything resembling Beatlemania was that show.
Did that get recorded?
I believe that there's some of it that's on YouTube.
Wow, I gotta look for that.
It was at a festival called Hemsby, which used to be sort of the big rock and roll festival there in England before. Now it's probably the Rockabilly Rave is the main one, but back then Hemsby was the thing. It was in a little town called Hemsby.
Gosh, and they must have been one of those bands that were way bigger in the UK than they were in the United States.
Yeah, it's a funny thing with the rockabilly artists, because I would say most of the rockabilly artists had very, very short careers here in the United States, like maybe a year or 2 or 3.
Yeah.
The Collins kids were on this show in Los Angeles called Town Hall Party, which was a very popular television show from about 1954 until the show went off the air in 1961. And then after that, they went to Vegas and Reno and Tahoe and just played in the lounges throughout the rest of the 60s and the 70s. So, they never had a huge hit in the States is what I was getting around to.
Yeah.
But then these reissue albums came out, and, the English and the European rockabilly just latched onto this stuff because the music was so great.
Yeah.
And they really, like a lot of these guys, they became cult heroes over there, even though not a lot of people knew who they were over here.
Yeah, and if you guys don't know who we're talking about, the Collins kids, go YouTube and watch their early videos. The energy is crazy. They were insane, crazy kids, and they were really young.
And the thing I like about the Collins kids is that it's sort of a universal thing. It really does hit people in a certain place when they see them play. Just a couple of years ago, one of these Instagram, Facebook channels just released this Town Hall Party video of Larry doing this Dwayne Eddy song called Ramrod. And it's just him jumping around the stage and, acting like a complete maniac. And, it got 4.5 million views. And, none of these people viewing it, I'm sure, had any idea who he was. But it's like you see this little kid jumping around with his double neck guitar, just rocking out. I mean, people just loved it. So they had that sort of universal appeal.
Yeah, and I well, we got very quickly here. We have to get around to your Merle Travis book. I'm almost done with it. I'm so into this book. I'm almost done reading it.
Cool.
But Larry, you talked to Larry in a little bit, and I mean, Larry was a kid when the crazy days of California country and Western TV shows were happening and stuff. And Larry was just this kid. But you talk of him as being, well, if there's something bad happening with Merle, why don't you send Larry over to try to bring him down? And you're like going, oh my God, this kid is being sent over to try to help out in a guy that's like drank too much, Oh my God. Stories.
Well, there's lots of stories like that because apparently when these guys would get really drunk and they would not talk to anybody else or deal with anybody else, they would be nice to Larry, and he's got this amazing story about one night Bob Wills was at town hall party and he refused to go on. He was sitting in the back of his Cadillac limousine. And so they're like, well, Larry, you go out and talk to Bob Wills. And so Larry got in the back with Bob Wills and he's like, gee, Mr. Wills, why won't you come on the show? and then Bob Wills puked all over his boots. I mean, the stories that Larry has are just mind blowing like that.
Are they both still around?
Lori Collins died. I want to say it was 2017, or maybe it was more recent than that. I got to look that up.
Wow.
But
wow.
But that was really hard on Larry because
they bet
so inseparable over the years.
God, crazy.
2018. She died in August of 2018.
We're gonna have to play after all this talk about Collins Kids. We're gonna have to play probably another song later. I don't know. We opened the show with a Collins Kids song tonight, but where do we go from here? Well, you mentioned Dave and Deke. You guys played and recorded together for quite a long time. Was you said that you guys played together this last weekend? Was that pretty? How long had it been before you had? What was the last time you guys played together?
Well, we play together a few times a year.
Oh, that's good.
People always seem to want that band, so they're happy to pay us to do another reunion.
Yeah, you guys have a good sound together, man.
When I first moved out to California, I moved out there with my surf band, the Untamed Youth, and really wanted that to take off, but it didn't. And around that same time, talking about the early 1990s, there was all this new kind of rockabilly thing happening with Big Sandy and the Fly Ride Trio, James Intveld, Russell Scott and the Red Hots, a bunch of other bands. And so Dave Stuckey and I, who were both from Missouri, but we both wound up in California, we started talking and we came up with this idea to come up with a rockabilly band that, sort of based ourselves on that hillbilly vocal duet sound, like Rusty and Doug Kershaw or the Louvin Brothers or Jimmy and Johnny or the Delmore Brothers, that sort of thing. And that was really kind of how we based the Dave and Deke combo on our sound. And we broke up in 96 and man, we've just been doing reunion shows ever since then. And we still got people that love that band.
Yep. Well, you got the sound and you got the fan base, and you guys, it sounds like you guys still love each other, which is cool.
Yeah. And of course now we're, it doesn't seem like we're that old. Like I don't consider myself to be an old timer, but we get these kids in their 20s coming up saying, I wasn't alive when Dave and Deke were playing. Like, oh man, geez, you really know how to hurt a guy.
Oh God, I tell you, man, the time just flies by. That's what Well, how old are you? Have a daughter, right?
I have a 14-year-old daughter. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look at that. I have a 22-year-old, and I mean, I remember holding them her in my arms, and it's just like, where's that time go? It's fucking gone. Man.
I know, it's just like a blink of an eye. It's gone.
She's playing music too, right?
She is. She plays guitar, and she really likes 90s grunge rock.
I think I saw a video.
It's pretty great because 90s grunge rock is 30 years old now, right? So it's very retro. I'm thinking, when I got into rockabilly and stuff, it was like 30 years old. So I guess it's like the same.
Isn't that weird? Yeah, everything goes around. Everything goes around.
Does, yeah.
Now, tell us about the Go Nuts.
Okay, see, I didn't want you to spring this on your unsuspecting audience if they didn't know what it was.
I did. I wanted to spring it on them.
Because it's weird, you have to explain it a little bit first. So this is right around the time that the Untamed Youth broke up. I was hanging out a lot with my friend Mel Bergman, who was in a band called the Phantom Surfers, and we decided that we needed to do something that would make us rich. And so we decided we wanted to come up with a cartoon or a live action kids TV show about a superhero rock and roll band that sang songs all about snack foods. And so we came up with this band called the Go Nuts. And it was a really good idea. I was the Donut Prince. My sidekick was the corn dog. Then there was another sidekick named the Donut Hole. The main guy that Mel played was Captain Corn Nut. And, we had all these songs about snack foods and how, eating snack foods and junk food is good and health foods are bad. It was perfectly made for, selling commercials, right?
Yeah.
Being on TV. So we did this for a number of years, and we played a show in Orange County. And these guys who were in a ska band saw us play. And about a month later, they reformed as superheroes with masks. And they called themselves the Aquabats.
Oh my God! And they did it. They pulled it off.
They got their own TV show.
Yep.
I was in Guitar Center the other day. You can buy the Aquabats drum set with their logos all over it. They did all the things that we actually intended to do with the Go Nuts.
That's not fair. That's not fair.
Well, that's
real life.
As a wise man once said, that's showbiz.
That's showbiz, man. And now, I looked for it today. I couldn't find it, but it seems like I remember watching a video of you guys being interviewed around it. You're all sitting at a table. Do you remember this?
Yeah, that was for the BBC, actually.
It was fucking hilarious. You guys are sitting at a table and you're being interviewed or something. I couldn't find it today, but if you go on YouTube, you guys, and put in Go Nuts, you'll find some great live videos of these guys dressed. You got to mention Banana Splits. You guys were kind of in that mode too there,
Yeah, absolutely. And we had this idea that, we would have these snack cannons and that we would blow snacks all over the audience, kind of like a Gallagher, I don't know what sort of experience.
Yeah, instead of T-shirts, snacks.
Yeah, and it, people who liked the Go Nuts really, really liked the Go Nuts. I mean, I saw a guy just leave a comment, said the Go Nuts are his favorite band. The last reunion show that we did was a while ago. We did a thing for a Norton Records benefit show. Oh. And it was so funny because, once you start using the snack cannons and blowing food all over the place, no club wants to hire you anymore. And so our reputation has completely preceded us.
Yeah.
And so this Norton Records benefit turned into a real clown show where they're like, okay, well, they can't play inside, but we do have this outdoor stage where they can play. And like, okay, we'll play the outdoor stage. We don't care. And it was in back of the club. It was at a club called the Echoplex, sort of in Silver Lake in Hollywood. And so we were all set to play outside. And then 3 days before this benefit show, they found out that the Rolling Stones were going to play this secret, unannounced show at the Echoplex. And then all of a sudden it was like, well, we can't have food in this walkway where Keith and Mick and then we're going to be walking. So that we can't have the Go Nuts play anymore. And so then we had to actually round up this volunteer army of people who would actually sweep and mop and clean up the area that we were playing in so that Keith Richards and Mick Jagger could walk past there and not slip.
The royalty were coming through, man. It's like a coronation or something. Holy shit, man.
But it's just like so many things. It just got to be too difficult for the Go Nuts to play.
Yeah.
But with all that being said, what song were you going to play?
I was going to just play the theme song.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. We had our own theme song with several different variations.
From what I saw, there's 8 different variations of the song.
Yeah. That's right.
But I mean, every rock and roll cartoon band has to have a theme song.
Exactly.
KMiC.
We had lots of other big hits like Let's Bring Cheese to China. I See the Mona Lisa and My Pepperoni Pizza.
Oh my God.
Chubby Chaser, Nutrition Break, Food Fight. I mean, it was all in place.
Yeah.
It was all in place. And then, it kind of never happened. The Aquabats stole our thunder.
Were you guys actually on Norton Records?
No, we were not. But the Untamed Youth were on Norton Records, and the Phantom Surfers were on Norton Records. So it was,
it was
all in the family. Fun. Yeah.
Oh man, so fun. That must have been a gas while you guys were just doing that stuff. But performing in those kind of costumes, I mean, that's not easy either.
Well, especially when you're overweight. I mean, we went and bought these, stretchy costumes, and then they were really, really tight. Like, we would have to zip each other up, and then they would just kind of barely zip up.
Oh my God.
And there's lots of good stories about Go Nut shows. I remember once I brought some chocolate syrup in a big bottle, and I poured it all over some broccoli, and I tried to set the broccoli on fire, like Jimi Hendrix at the Monterey Pop Festival.
Yeah, good idea.
But I thought it was a good idea. But then this guy grabbed the chocolate syrup bottle, and he stood right in front of the stage, and he just went like this.
Oh!
And he just sprayed me down with chocolate syrup. And after the show, it was all dried on me. So just getting that uniform off of me, it was already too tight. It was like literally stuck to me like it had super glue on there or something.
Oh my God. Crazy, man. Crazy times. But what I wish I would have seen a Go Nut show. I really wish I would have seen one. I didn't get to see that. Damn.
Well, you might have lost an eye,
Well, I did survive a Guar show once, so.
Yeah.
That was close.
We were like Guar with snack food.
Yeah. The banana splits and Guar mixed together, kind of. Pretty cool. I enjoy it. I know that now. Surf Guitar 101 convention on July 29th.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. That's gonna be fun.
That's a big deal, huh? Is that down in LA?
Yeah, that's in Orange County. Yeah, I believe, and I'm going to be doing a special Link Ray show there, and maybe even playing Link Ray's guitar, like I mentioned.
Whoa! Will the Whippersnappers be backing you up on that?
No, I'm playing with a couple of surf guys, well-known surf guys in the scene on bass and drums.
Wow, that's going to be something, man. That's going to be something. I just wanted to jump through a few things here. You just got a song put into a new Johnny Knoxville TV show, right?
Yeah, that was a very cool recent thing. He has a brand new show. It's not out yet. It's debuting May 24th on ABC. It's called The Prank Panel, and it's hilarious. Everything that I've seen about it is really, really funny.
Guy's a lunatic, yeah.
And, Knoxville has approached me a number of times. I've had a bunch of songs in his movies and other things over the years. He came to me and he said that ABC had sort of assigned this theme music to him that he really hated. And so he wanted me to come up with a theme song. And so I did. So you will hear that as the theme song on this new ABC TV show.
That's cool, man. That's where it's at, man. Doing the soundtrack stuff. You've done, like you say, you've done other soundtracks for his other projects that he's done. So good connection, sounds like. Very good connection.
Yeah, and I have to say, unlike most of Hollywood, Johnny Knoxville has really, really great musical taste. He loves rockabilly, he loves country, he loves punk rock, he loves blues. I mean, he's just really cool music. So it's nice having a guy like that on your team,
Yeah. And now another thing I wanted to ask you about is when I was at Disneyland last time, I heard a Deke Dickerson song in Cars Land.
Yeah. It's funny, like I still get people texting me, hey, I'm at Cars Land and I heard one of your songs.
I mean, what is that? Does that bring in money for you?
No.
Really? Oh, that's disgusting. That damn company?
Long story short, I spent several months trying to track that down, like, hey, look, people are telling me that I've got two songs, Hot Rod Queen and Hot Rodder's Lament, that are getting played over and over and over and over again This is while you're waiting in line, right?
Yeah, you hear it constantly.
It's not in the ride. It's while you're waiting in line. So, I talked to the people from BMI, tried to figure out like, hey, am I getting paid for this? What's going on? And eventually I found out that if they broadcast the speakers in a public area and it's not part of the ride, then no, you don't get any kind of royalties on that.
That is not right at all. I'm sorry, man. In their park, being played over and over and over again. And what can you do? The damn Disney lawyers, man. You don't want to fuck with them, man.
No, I mean, when it comes to that sort of thing, I do have another really bizarre Disney story, though.
Oh, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, you can probably relate to this just being a cartoonist and an artist and all that.
Yeah.
So this was over 10 years ago. I got a phone call. It was a very weird phone call. It was out of the blue. And a guy said, well, your song, Hot Rodder's Lament, we're putting together an album. Do you know the character Mater from the Disney movie Cars, right?
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, he's like the redneck truck character, right? And he goes, yeah. Well, we want to have Mater sing that song. And I'm like, well, okay. Do you want me to record how do you want to do this? You want me to record the tracks and then the guy who does Mater to sing it? How do you want to do this? And they said, I don't know. We've already recorded it. We just need you to approve this, right? And so the guy had this whole rap about how it was only going to be for sale in Canada and that I would be receiving, Canadian royalties. And then that was it. Like I said, yes, on the phone. I never got a contract in the mail, nothing. And then this CD came out and it was in every Walmart in America of, Mater's cartoons with this like sort of easy listening, sort of like very produced sounding version of my song on there. And it was like, I don't want to hire lawyers like to go up against Disney.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell, man? This is utterly bizarre. But then it was a very fortuitous, actually, because right during the pandemic, it was during 2020, I got another phone call from a Disney guy saying, hey, we want to renew your contract. It's been 10 years. And I said,
what
I never
contract?
got a contract. I never signed anything. A guy told me it was for Canada only. And I've been, wondering what to do about this for 10 years. And so eventually I was able to talk them into issuing me a retroactive payment and signing a new contract. So I did eventually get paid. And it actually couldn't have come at a better time. It came like smack dab in the middle of the pandemic when I wasn't working. So
yeah, and you can thank that one guy who had enough, about him to give you a call, right? Otherwise, if he wouldn't have called you, nobody would have ever known, right? Oh my God.
Well, the only reason I got paid is because they really needed to sign the new 10-year extension contract. And I'm like, no, I'm not signing it until I get paid for the first one,
Insane, man. Disney is an insane company.
Yeah, and it's so multi-tentacled too. It's not like it's one company located in Burbank and there's only 1,000 employees and it's all under one roof. There's so many Disney businesses out there that it's like, it's like playing whack-a-mole. I mean, you can't really like nail down exactly where the mistake happened.
Yeah, insane, man, insane. Now
well, somebody on the screen just asked the question, what about the e-thing thing? I will say that I had a very good experience with Disney just last year. I got contacted by a guy who was doing the Wonderful World of Mickey Mouse cartoon on Disney Plus, I think is the channel that it is. And he said, we're doing this episode where he goes in the country and I want Mickey to do some e-thing. And this guy said that he had tried e-thing himself, but he couldn't do it. And so he looked me up on the internet and he said that I was known for my e-thing. And I said, yeah, hell yeah, I want to e-f in a Mickey Mouse cartoon.
Yes.
And so, they paid me typical union scale for that, which was a nice payday. But it was just so cool because I got to e-f in a real Mickey Mouse cartoon.
Damn.
And now I can actually say that I believe that I am the world's only professional e-fer.
That's even cool, man. Now, I don't want to, I'm just going to go out on a limb here because a lot of people don't even understand what we're talking about, but I would like you to even discuss Ethan.
Well, you know what's even better? If you will, can you play stuff off the internet? It sounds
Yes.
like you can.
Yes.
Go to YouTube.
Okay.
And type in Jimmy Jimmie Riddle.
Spell that again.
Jimmie.
Got it.
Riddle. Riddle.
Got it. Eefing.
Yep. And then there should be, I'm going to look myself. Yeah. Jimmy Riddle on Eefing. Play that.
Jimmy. Oh, I see it. Okay. So
this will tell you
it's impossible
exactly what it is.
Yeah, it's impossible. It's impossible to explain it. You just have to hear it.
And Jimmy Riddle was the master of Eefing. Myself and Dave Stuckey have kind of taken it upon ourselves, and also Bert from the Whippersnappers, to learn how to do Eefing. And I believe, like I said, I am the world's only professional Eefer. but Jimmy Riddle was the master. So let's listen to hear him talk about how.
I've also seen a video of you teaching a crowd of people how to Eef at a festival once.
Yes.
Which was the most hilarious thing I ever saw in my life. Okay, if you don't know what Eefing is, you haven't heard Eefing. You haven't heard anything until you've heard this KMiC Radio.
You start out with the letter E.
Mm-hmm.
You say E.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say E, and then you go, and then you kind of gasp. You put the three together, E, like that, and then you do I. See, yeah, E. I'll do it real slow. E, eyes, E, 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 eyes, O, E, Learn that now, you'll act.
Where in the heck did that ever come from, do you expect?
My uncle, on my mother's side, taught me when I was a little boy. He used to do it for me.
I guess it's
He called it hoodlin'. They call it Eefing now.
Mm-hmm.
And he got it from somebody to dance up at Dyersburg, Tennessee.
Hoodlin'. So kind of like yodeling, but hoodlin'.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of records too. If you are a record collector, there are actually a bunch of Eefing records. Like, I think the first example that I've been able to find is Harmonica Frank Floyd on Sun Records, with his record Swamp Root in 1950 was the first recorded version of it. And then it sort of became a thing because that guy Jimmy Riddle, along with the guy Jackie Phelps, was on this TV show called Hee Haw in the 1970s, and they were Eefing every week. And it became this huge thing. So there were all these kind of weird spin-off records. Like Jimmy Riddle actually did a record called Wildwood Eef, backed with Yakety Eef. And, the Chipmunks even did a record called Eef and Alvin. There was sort of a hit record by a guy named Joe Perkins called Little Eef and Annie. And it just goes on and on. So
are you kidding? There's chipmunk Eefing? I have to hear that sometime. I've never heard of chipmunk Eefing.
Yeah, just look up Eef and Alvin. It was not a hit, but it was issued by Liberty Records.
I'm glad you brought that up because I almost forgot to bring up Eefing. Holy crap, that was an important part of this interview here. Now we have to get to this. I've mentioned it, but my God. I don't know when you started working on this, but it is an amazing piece of work. And if you want to get into the history of one of the most important guitar players in music history, this is where you got to go. And I'm about what I got left. I think I got 100 pages left, something like that. But it's something special. Wow, how did you get into this? How did this start?
Well, it's like a lot of things that I do. I just realized that there was this big hole there where there should be something and there wasn't anything. And I wondered to myself, how come there had never been a Merle Travis book? He was such an important figure in country music and guitar playing and guitar inventing. I mean, the guy came up with a bunch of inventions that are still being used today. And I eventually found out that Merle had started an autobiography several times from about 1966 through the time that he died in the early 1980s. He worked on and off on this autobiography, and he didn't get that far. It was all pretty raw and unedited, but he tried. It just never got finished.
Yeah.
So I approached his daughters and I said, let's do a Merle Travis book. There needs to be a Merle Travis book. They both lived in Southern California, and they were really up for the idea. And they had all of his stuff that he had when he died in a storage unit in Santa Barbara. And so when Cindy, his second daughter, started going through this stuff in the storage unit, she found almost 100 pages of really raw, unedited autobiographical writing. And so I took that to Scott Bomar at BMG Publishing, which is, it's a big publishing concern.
Huge.
And I just said, look, this guy is a country music Hall of Famer. He doesn't have any book out. He really needs a book out. He did a lot of stuff. And we just found all this unpublished autobiographical writing. And, luckily Scott was all for the idea. And so that was really how the book got started. And then I just kind of took it and ran with it. I went and interviewed everybody that was still alive that had,
how many people you think you interviewed? 100?
I interviewed about 70 people for the book. And then, used a lot of interviews from people that had passed away that I was able to access. And that was the most difficult thing is, Merle was born in that era where everybody was dead. And the few people that were still alive were in their 90s, and I interviewed 6 or 7 people in their 90s for the book, and only one of them's left. Wow. Marilyn Tuttle, my neighbor here, that is also one of 2 that are left from the Town Hall Party show. I think her and Larry Collins are the only 2 that are left from the Town Hall Party show.
Damn, it's crazy. Merle's writings are really actually really good.
Yeah.
I mean, you publish in the book, you publish some letters, like he'd write a letter to a guitar maker, or you'd write a letter to a magazine that he didn't like the interview he did or something. And they're so well written. I mean, and then what's really great is the little love notes that he writes too. Yeah. It's a fantastic thing.
Well, thank you very much. And that, that really was the surprising thing about why there was no Merle Travis book, because of all the country music performers from the 20th century, he was by far, everybody knew him as the most literate guy. He wrote articles for magazines. He wrote for Guitar Player magazine and Guitar World magazine. Everybody knew him as this writer, and everybody considered him a genius. So that's why it was so striking that he did not have a book.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that we were able to include so much of his own writing in the book.
Yeah, the word genius comes up quite often in the book, and I'm not even surprised. Innovator, inventor, cartoonist, writer, songwriter, guitarist extraordinaire, did things that nobody else had done on the guitar.
Yeah.
But for me, what seemed very controversial about the book is the talk about him being before Les Paul in certain places, in certain recording techniques, as far as being one of the first people to play and actually use solid body guitars. I really had never heard that before. I was kind of surprised by that.
And it's not just conspiracy theory stuff. I mean, it's actually documented and everything.
Right.
It's
you
can
see the dates. You can see the dates. And Les Paul never talked about it. Right.
Well, Les Paul was one of these guys like Dick Dale, and I'm a huge fan of Les Paul and Dick Dale. I love both those guys. Too. But they both really love to take credit for stuff, and they weren't real keen on giving credit to other people. Yeah. So, Les Paul always talked about how he was the first guy to play a solid body guitar, and how he was the first guy to do multiple recordings with, speeded up tape and all that. And it turns out, that Merle Travis actually beat him on both counts by a few months.
Yeah.
And they were both signed to Capitol Records. They were both living in Los Angeles in the 1940s, and they were friends. You know, they knew each other socially, and in fact, Merle had even dated Mary Ford before Les.
Exactly.
Back when she was a country singer known by her original name, Colleen Summers.
Yeah. It's an incredible story. You guys, if you have any interest in this kind of stuff, this could be a movie. Seriously, Deke.
Well, that's really what the Travis daughters want, is they want it to be a movie. And I think one of the things that won them over with the idea of doing a book is I said, look, you can't have a movie unless you have a book first.
Right,
so
right. That's the way to go.
That was kind of how we went for it. And
totally. Have you seen?
It's an incredible story. He really is kind of like a Forrest Gump of country music. Like he was just in these right places at the right time.
And
all throughout his life.
He lived a long life too.
He lived to be 65, which is not that long. But
he lived through eras, certain special eras. He lived in different eras, which was, I guess it was the time period he lived in that seemed so unique, but lots and lots of problems with drugs and alcohol. Oh my God, the stories go on and on and on. But man, the story always goes, when he wasn't on those, he was a wonderful, compassionate man. When he was evil, pretty much.
Yeah, and it's certainly not a unique story with guitar players or country musicians. I mean, growing up, that was just kind of the deal, is that guitar players were drunks, country musicians were drunks. That's just the way it was. You know what I mean? And a lot of people forget that in this modern era. But back then, if you had any business to discuss, you went to a bar to discuss it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he was just kind of a product of those times, I think. And some people, as you know, can handle alcohol better than others. And man, he couldn't.
How many wives did he have?
5 that we know of.
There was the talk of the Mexican marriage that just takes one trip across the border and you're done. You got it. So if you really wanted to get laid and the girl was just like, well, I have to be married, you could just jam across.
That was something that he discovered when he moved to Southern California in the mid 1940s, is that you could go to Tijuana and get a Mexican marriage and then immediately get it dissolved,
Oh my
God.
And
so for him, that was like this great sort of key of opening the door to to sexuality. I mean, that's just the way it was back then.
Oh my God.
So as far as we know, there are 5, but I have to suspect that there's probably several more that we don't even know about.
Yeah, it's a great story. Let's do a Merle Travis set, and we'll come back and talk to Deke a little bit more before he burns out, because I don't want to keep him too long, but he's wonderful.
Well, we were just talking about me being at Viva Las Vegas. I came back from Viva Las Vegas with a very scratchy throat, and now after being on with you for over an hour, I'm like,
I know how it is. I always go, when I go to the comic book conventions. Terry Beatty here can probably attest to this, and Gary can attest to this. Is con throat. You sit in a convention hall for like 2-3 days, and all you do is talk, and you go, oh my God, I'm getting sick, and then you get home and you go, oh no, I just talked fucking too much is all it was.
Yeah.
KMiC Radio with Merle Travis's Money song right there. He wrote that. And Tennessee Ernie Ford did that version, which really, really made Merle a ton. Actually, probably 16 tons of money, I would think. He had a Cadillac that had the license plate 16 tons on it.
That's right, yeah. That was the number 1 song of 1955.
Crazy.
Yeah.
What a big hit. Divorce Me COD. That was a pretty big hit too.
It was. That was one of his big hits he had when he was an early Capitol artist in the late 1940s.
And then from the Merle Travis guitar record, Blue Smoke, man. And what picking.
Yeah.
Fuck. That's crazy. Yeah, well, like I say, I don't want to hold you up. I know that you've been working damn hard, and you got shows. I think I'm gonna come see you maybe Mose Alley May 17th. I really want to be at that show. God, I wish I could come to the Link Ray set that you're going to do in LA. That's going to be something. July 29th. You're going to be in the UK at the Rockabilly, what is it? Rockabilly Revival or something like that?
The Rockabilly Rave.
Yeah, the Rave.
The week before that, I'm going to be at the Screamin' Festival in outside Barcelona, Spain. But I should mention, since it's only like a week and something away, we're playing May 17th in Santa Cruz at Moe's Alley. We're playing May 18th in Morro Bay at, why am I blanking on the name of that club now? We're playing May 19th at Grillin' and Chillin' in Hollister.
That's not too far
May
from
20th. Me. No, it's not bad. It's pretty close to San Jose, actually.
Yeah, I could get there.
May 20th, we're playing at the Torch Club in Sacramento. And then May 21st, we're playing at the Hop Monk Tavern up in Sebastopol. That's myself and the Whippersnappers. And
nice.
We had a ball. We were just up there in, I think, November or December, something like that. And looking forward to coming back.
KC, man. KC is a great new promoter, man. He's like the new Bill Graham of the Bay Area.
Yeah, that's right.
Hey, I want to ask you about this guy. What does Buddy Holly mean to you? I know he's big with you.
You're asking me?
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because every so often there will be a biopic that comes out, a musical biopic, and they're always terrible. I mean, as far as being like factual and whatever, they're always terrible. And when I look at the Buddy Holly story now, I'm like, wow, this is a terrible movie. Like, they're supposed to be in Lubbock, but there's like mountains outside Lubbock. I mean, Lubbock is as flat as it gets.
It is terrible.
Like, they're not even calling the crickets by their right names.
No,
they're playing musical instruments. They're playing musical instruments that were made in the 1970s. Like, Buddy Holly always played a Stratocaster, and Gary Busey's playing a Telecaster.
Yeah.
Like, it's just terrible. But I will say this much: whenever one of those movies comes out, like Walk the Line, or there's been so many of them over the years, I do know that there will be a certain segment of kids in a certain age, like 12 to 16 years old, that go to see those terrible movies, but they get really turned on and energized by the music.
Yep.
So that's what happened to me when I saw the Buddy Holly story. I was like, this is great. I love Buddy Holly. And I still love Buddy Holly. I think he's one of the greatest, most underrated songwriters that we've ever had in America. And the true genius of Buddy Holly is that he was able to do so many things melodically and with a pop essence to it that were extremely simple. And when you're talking about pop geniuses, most of them get into some very complex stuff. Brian Wilson with Pet Sounds, that sort of thing. And I love that. Nothing wrong with that. But the genius of Buddy Holly is that he was able to do so much with like 3 or 4 chords. A 3-piece band, guitar, bass, and drums. Not a lot of like fancy solo picking, just like a lot of like chord solos. And that was really his genius, is to come up with these songs that stick in your brain that are so simple and to the point. And I love Buddy Holly just as much today as I did when I was 13 years old and first saw that movie.
I hear you. That same DJ that I met when I was 16 turned me on to Buddy, and I've just been a big fan of his ever since then. You did a video tour on Facebook once through Norman Petty's studios that I'll never forget. And that was something.
I was just there September or October of last year. They actually flew me out to Lubbock to do a presentation at Texas Tech. It was not about Buddy Holly, but it was about guitars. Yeah. And then myself and Roger Landis, the professor there that brought me in to speak, we took a day and we drove to Clovis, New Mexico, and got to take the tour with 89-year-old Kenneth Broad, who's the guy that got the studio back together and started giving tours and everything. And this time around I was like, okay, every time I've been here I've been so overwhelmed that I don't really take pictures or video of everything. And this time I was like, I'm taking pictures and video of everything. The wall treatment, the floor treatment, the piano, the organ, all the little microphone accessories, because Norman Petty was really one of those guys that, man, that guy was a a true genius in the world of recording. And there's not one thing in that studio that he didn't have there on purpose for some very specific reason. And you can learn a lot just by looking at what he did in that small space to make it so good for recording, and the microphones that he was using, and the instruments. That guy was really, really, really sharp. So yeah, that was a super fun visit for me, just because I wasn't on a time limit. I got to spend as much time as I wanted in there. It was great.
It was I felt like I was there. Is that still up and available? That was wonderful to watch, man. I'd love to watch that.
Well, yeah, it's on my Facebook page. I posted a bunch of videos and pictures.
It's
and, if you're going through Clovis, New Mexico, you just got to give him a little advance notice and just call a couple of days in advance. But you can still go there and take a tour with Kenneth Broad, and I would recommend that you go now, because he's getting up there in years. And,
I wish I would have done it. I took a trip. My first exodus to Lubbock was in I'm going to say 1988, and I went down there, and this name, Bill Griggs. I went to Bill Griggs' house. Oh yeah. And I went to Bill Griggs' house because I was a member of the Buddy Holly Memorial Society.
Nice.
And he brought me in. He
probably gave you the tour, right?
Yeah. Oh, I hung out at his house, but I didn't think to go to the studio. Maybe they didn't have it set up at that time doing that kind of stuff. But I have a picture of myself with Buddy Holly's glasses on, a pair of Buddy Holly's glasses that Bill had laying around in the back room. And oh my God, that's awesome. I'll never forget that trip. But
and this is bringing up something in the dim recesses of my mind, but I think we may have talked about Bill Griggs before.
Yeah.
When I was in my teens, I went up to the Clear Lake, Iowa thing that they do every February. They have a big, Buddy Holly concert celebration memorial thing.
Yeah.
And it was so bitter cold, man. It was like minus 15 degrees and snow and ice, and it was just freezing. I mean, you really got the sense of like, oh wow.
Why he didn't want to be on the bus, right? Yeah.
The winter dance party tour was like, and Bill Griggs took us out to the crash site on Sunday morning, after the big concert and everything. It was me and two of my other buddies. And this was before they had any sort of memorial. Are you still there?
Yeah.
This is before they had any sort of memorial out there. It was just still a cornfield. Jeez. And so we just walked way out in the middle of this cornfield, and we see this farmer coming at us, and we're like, oh no, we got in trouble. We're trespassing on this guy's land. And it turns out he was the guy that discovered the bodies.
Oh my God.
And he was ancient. He was probably.
Wait, whoa. What the hell? What the hell?
Ghost in the machine, man.
Something weird's going on here. Holy crap.
Ghost in the machine.
Yeah, it is.
But anyway, I got to spend a little time with Bill Griggs myself. He was just a very, very passionate guy about Buddy Holly.
I was gonna say about the Buddy Holly story, the movie. You do know the Sonny Curtis song called "The Real Buddy Holly Story."
Yeah,
he like after that movie came out, Sonny Curtis writes this song called "The Real Buddy Holly Story," and it's so sweet. It tells you that ain't the way it was. I was there. It's a sweet song.
And what's funny is I just saw the Buddy Holly story on TV recently, and I looked it up on Wikipedia, and it turns out the reason why they call the Crickets Jim Bob and whatever Ray, whatever their names are in the movie, the reason they didn't use the real Crickets names is because the Crickets at that time were trying to get their own movie together that was going to be the real Buddy Holly story. And so somehow or another, they got written out of the script.
Wow.
Of the actual Buddy Holly story. And that's kind of the deal of why that whole...
So they spoke up at the wrong time, really, because the movie that they were going to make didn't get made. Oh.
Yeah, and it was always kind of a war with Maria Elena versus the Lubbock people and all that. So the Buddy Holly story wound up being, Maria Elena... she was the one that made the money off of that.
Yeah. Wow. Crazy. Well, God, Deke, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me on the show, man. I'm glad that we finally got to do this after I canceled on you.
I know, man.
A year and a half ago.
We were going to do it back then, but you had a big project of clearing out your storage unit to do at that time, so we weren't able to do it. But let's go out. Yeah. If you're going to be taken off, I'm going to play a nice triple shot of Deke Dickerson, and we're going to end with a song you did with the Low Straight Jackets, which is really cool. And thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on the show, man. I really appreciate it. Hope to see you in Santa Cruz.
I'm going to try to be there. KMiC Radio. Remember, music heals.